Think of as many animal names as you can that start with the letter C. Cat, coyote, cougar, caribou, maybe a little crested ibis, right? You could keep going on and on. There's over 4,000 of them. My daughter looked it up yesterday. This is what an adult brain looks like when it's doing that type of task. All of those red and gold areas have a lot of brain activity going on. What do you think the 11-year-old brain looks like when they're doing that type of task? They have way more activity. There's massive amounts of brain energy and resources in all these different parts of the brain doing that task. What happened between these two brains? Here's what we know. When we're learning, we have a heavy cognitive load. It takes a lot of our brain's resources to do the one thing we're doing or the one thing we're learning. That's why that young brain needs a ton of brain resources just to think of those animal names, while the older expert brain does not. And that's why you never interrupt your husband when he's assembling furniture. He has a massive cognitive load. He needs all of his brain's resources just to figure out that diagram. And the brain doesn't like having a heavy cognitive load. The brain wants the easy way out. So anything it has to do a lot, it builds a shortcut for. Here's one way that happens. This is a picture from a newborn baby's brain. Each of these is a neuron or nerve cell in the brain. The black circles are the nuclei or soma, and the skinny lines are the connections, the axons and dendrites. You probably know this. Here's what that same part of the brain looks like at age 2. Notice what has changed. There aren't many more black circles. They didn't grow a bunch of new neurons. But there are a lot more skinny lines. They grew more connections. So just by living in the world, we're growing connections. But these overcrowded connections are really inefficient. Think of it this way. The signal is trying to get from the start to the finish. How's it going to get there? It's a total jungle of connections with no clear path. And this is why it takes kids forever to do anything. We're like, put on your shoes. Put on your shoes. Put on your shoes. And their brains are making these loop-de-loops instead of going straight from start to finish. So it's not the children's fault that they're so slow. It's just they're really overcrowded brains. But as we do things again and again, the brain removes the connections it doesn't need. It prunes them, just like we prune an apple tree to make it grow more fruit. The brain cuts back what it doesn't need so it can nurture the parts it does need. And this isn't just happening in little kids. It's happening in all of us. Our brains are always learning when we're young and when we're old. Our brains are different now from how they were when I started talking. It happens that fast. But not all of those changes stick. It's when we keep working out something, thinking about it, mulling it over, repeating it, that it gets easier for the brain to do. So right now you're thinking, that's why we have to practice, right? We have to do things again and again so that we can turn those connection jungles into neuronal superhighways. But who wants to practice? Well, when you're interested in what you're doing, it's easy to practice. I have a friend who has his doctorate in artificial intelligence. Smart guy. He didn't start reading until he was 8 years old. A little late. He didn't care at all about reading. All he wanted to do was math. He was going to a Montessori school, and his teachers were trying to be patient, but they were really starting to get nervous. Until one day, one of his teachers gave him a math word problem. He was like, wait a minute, you need to read to do math? And in that moment, reading became relevant to him. Before they knew it, he started to read. And the more he worked through those word problems, the easier reading became. It was his interest that drove him to repeat, so repetition wasn't such a chore. This is pointing us to 3 truths we know about the brain. First, that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to the brain. My friend started reading later than expected, but he started doing math earlier than expected. He was on a unique developmental timeline. Next, the more we practice things, the easier they get. Reading those word problems made it easier for him to read. And third, we repeat what interests us. Interest is learning's superpower. When we're interested in something, we want to do it again and again and again. And the more we practice, the easier it gets. The brain gets more efficient at anything it does repeatedly. Anything, good, bad, or ugly. So, because I love language, I read and write all the time. I've made my brain good at language. Because my daughter loves music. She plays instruments and listens to music every day. She's made her brain good at music. And because my mother loves to shop, she's shopping all the time, she made her brain good at shopping. We repeat what interests us, and repetition sculpts the brain. This is one reason why no two brains are alike. We make them unique based on our interests. So how do you help somebody learn something that they need to learn, but they're not interested in learning? One way is to make it relevant to them. When I was a Montessori teacher years ago, I had a 6-year-old student named Robbie. Robbie couldn't read, and he didn't want to practice any of the letter and sound activities that should help him learn to read. Robbie was an animal lover. All he wanted to do was look at books about animals and draw pictures of animals. One day, Robbie had a field guide open to a page about chuckwalla lizards. I went over to the guide and I pointed. I said, chuckwalla, chuckwalla. That's a chuckwalla lizard. Do you want to copy that down? And he said, yes. And he wrote it down. And then he started writing nonstop, copying down all these animal names. 3 weeks later, Robbie started to read. It was his interest that overcame his challenges. His interest gave him a reason to practice working with letters and sounds. This story is pointing us back to those 3 simple truths about the brain. First, no two brains are alike. Second, repetition makes things easier to do. And third, we repeat what interests us. Many schools are already putting this science into practice. If you visit one of these schools, you'll see a lot of project-based learning. You'll see one or a few students working together on something, going deep into a topic for weeks or even months. They'll be working on some big application of what they're learning, maybe a presentation or a report or something they physically build. The teachers in these schools aren't teaching so much as they're guiding. They're masters at sparking student interest and then hooking them on a topic. Did any of you go to a school like this where you were able to choose your work and work on it for as long as you needed? Well, if you had, your brain might work differently than if you went to a traditional school. Research has already shown that students in more student-led and interest-driven schools score higher on measures of creativity, attention, self-regulation, and social interaction. And you can see differences in the brain. Recently, a group of researchers scanned the brains of students who went to traditional schools that were more teacher-led and test-driven, and compared them with the brains of Montessori students in schools that were more student-led and interest-driven. Here's what they found. The Montessori students had greater neuronal stability and greater network integration. These colors are showing us the places in the brain where those differences were found. So the type of school you go to may influence brain development in measurable ways. Neuroscience is still uncovering exactly how experience influences the brain. But what we know so far points clearly to the benefits of interest-driven deep learning. We want teachers and students who have brains that can go deep, who can answer the hard questions. We want robust brains, and we can get there if we follow the science. First, be flexible with timelines because no two brains are alike. Second, find reasons and opportunities for students to repeat and go deep because repetition makes things easier. And third, help students develop their interest and turn them into fields of inquiry where they can choose what they work on. Because interest is learning's superpower. The brain science is clear and solutions exist. The question is, will we keep teaching against the brain, or will we finally start teaching with it?